This lesson is proudly brought to you by Kagiso Trust in partnership with the Limpopo Department of Education and Capricorn FM. Kagiso Trust, overcoming poverty.
6 minutes after 5, that is the time. It is Capricorn FM, Limpopo's hottest frequency. It's time for us to get into today's catch-up lessons with hashtag Kagiso Radio Teacher. Today we're going to be taking a look at Life Sciences Term 1, Human Reproductive System, male and female, and gametogenesis, right?
Yeah. Told you leave it alone.
Gametogenesis, right?
Yeah, it's correct.
Yeah.
Well done. No, I looked at it once and I was like,
yeah, this is new.
I'm not getting involved.
This is new, all right? And then our hashtag Kagiso Radio Teacher for today, Mr. Manjia. They're here with you all the way up until 6 o'clock to take you through today's lesson. Now, please get your material ready, your pen, paper ready, and also alert other grade 12 learners to tune into Capricorn FM right now. If you've got any questions, the number to hit us up on is 08265424446.
Over to you.
Okay. Good evening, my lovely students. We're meeting again. I'm Mr. Majia SR, attached to Texila Secondary School. So, as they've already uttered something with regard to presentation, I'm going to deal with human reproduction, and then my focus is going to be based on meiosis as part of introduction, and also gametogenesis, and then from there, we're going to check male and female reproductive systems. So, as part of introduction, like I've already indicated, number one, you need to know, as part of revision that we discussed last time, to say meiosis forms gametes. And remember, when you talk about gametes, we're talking about sperm cells and egg cells. And then from there, the sperm cell, we know that it fertilizes the egg cells. And then ultimately we are going to end up having a zygote. But the most important thing as part of revision, we said the sperm cell has got one set, and then we term it haploid. One set meaning that it has got haploid set of chromosomes, and then also the egg cell has got one set haploid set of chromosomes. And then the main reason why we end up having sperm cell with one set and egg cell with one set, it is because the process of fertilization is going to take place. And then the zygote that is going to be formed must have true N. Remember, we said in a normal cell of a human being, when we say this cell is normal, it must have 46 chromosomes. If it is more than 46 chromosomes, it causes a lot of disorders. If it is less than 46 chromosomes again, it causes a lot of disorders. Maybe to mention a few of them, we have got Hutchinson-Gilford-Progeria syndrome, we have got Klinefelter syndrome, Down syndrome, which is also regarded as trisomy 21, and so on and so on. This was just part of introduction of today's lesson. And then last time there was a learner who asked questions based on endocrine system, although the very same learner said something with regard to the pituitary gland, to check as to whether maybe, in fact, he or she wanted to know the hormones that are released by the pituitary gland. So don't worry, we are going to discuss this one thoroughly under endocrine system, but just as part of introduction. The pituitary gland is also regarded as the master gland because it controls all the endocrine glands. Then we are going to deal with almost everything, like I indicated, with regard to endocrine system. But maybe for interest's sake, we've got almost 9 hormones that are released by the pituitary gland. I normally abbreviate them as AGA, POL, TFM. AGA, POL, TFM. I'm still going to repeat the very same process when we'll be discussing that, where A stands for ADH. And then we also have adrenocorticotropic hormone. We also have the prolactin. Although ADH is coming from the hypothalamus and stored on the back lobe of the pituitary gland, and also the oxytocin, which is also released from the hypothalamus and stored in the pituitary gland, more especially the back lobe. We've got a lot of them, even the TSA, thyroid stimulating hormone, the follicle stimulating hormone, the luteinizing hormone. Like I indicated, we are going to discuss a lot of questions, or a lot of this when we'll be busy with endocrine system, because it deals with all the hormones. But the true hormones that we are going to dwell much today on, and then they're based on FSH and LH. Then I'll discuss it during the right time. But now, let us start with the male reproductive system. And then from there, we're going to focus our attention on the female reproductive system. And then thereafter is then that we are going to deal with gametogenesis. Like I indicated to you last time to say, life sciences is very easy and straightforward, and it just conscientizes you about what you were not aware of. Number one, maybe as part of introduction again, we know that a child or a lady who is 15 years old and a small child who is maybe 2 years old, when you look at their features, they differ. More especially with regard to breast, the hips, and so on and so on. Now we're going to dwell much on almost everything, so that you need to understand what's really happening there. So, but like I indicated, let us start with the male reproductive system. You can just think aloud with regard to all the parts that you know that are found in the male organ. Then let us start with the testis, for example. We've got testis. We also have the epididymis. We also have the sperm duct, which is also regarded as the vas deferens. We also have the 3 glands, which are regarded as the accessory glands, namely the seminal vesicle, the prostate gland, and also the corpus gland. So we also have the ejaculatory duct, and the urethra, and also the penis. So now it is very vital for you to know all these parts, more especially with regard to the drawing, because now I'm going to give you the functions of all these testes, epididymis, and so on and so on. But normally when examiners set questions based on this, sometimes he give you the structure. Maybe let us talk about the structure of the male reproductive system. After giving you the structure, you must be able to identify those parts or identify all the labels. Why? Because it is very vital for you to know this. Because if you don't know it, let me say you know the function of testis, but you don't know where the testis is, or you are not supposed to, you don't know how to label the testis. It's going to be challenging to you. Or like epididymis, you need to know where the epididymis is, because sometimes the examiner says, what is the function of the part number 2? It may be number 2 is epididymis. So you need to know that, epididymis, its function is 1, 2, 3. But the first thing, you need to know that this is epididymis. So let us start with the testis. The testis produces 2 main things. Number 1, it produces the sperm cells. Number 2, it releases the hormone, which is called the testosterone. It releases the hormone called testosterone. Like I indicated that with regard to life sciences, everything becomes simple because you start to conscientize yourself to say, okay, now that I'm having 1, 2, 3, it is because of 1, 2, 3. So let us check what is the function of the testosterone. This one is responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics in males. Responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics in males. For argument's sake, although I was giving an example of the female, let us take the example of the male now. If maybe you know any boy who is maybe 2 or 3 years old, and any guy who is more than maybe 17 or 18 years old, and when you check them and you compare, you will realize that they do differ. Maybe before we even give you the science here, you already know what is the difference between the small boy who is 3 years old and also a guy who's even 20 or 24 years old. Number 1, remember I said the testosterone is responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics in males, more especially at puberty stage. Number 1, as example of those secondary sexual characteristics, is the enlargement of voice box, the growth of pubic hairs, growth of facial hairs and body hairs, and then enlargement of the male reproductive organ, which is the penis, and so on and so on. These are the roles that are played by the hormone testosterone, which is released by the testis. Now, when you check the testis, remember the testis has got the tube-like structure inside, which is called the seminiferous tubule, but also the testis has got just on top of the testis, there's a certain highly coiled tubule, which is called the epididymis. So meaning that immediately after the sperm cell have been formed inside the testes. They are going to be stored there in the epididymis. And then the epididymis is like the goalkeeper. He holds the ball temporarily. So even the sperm cells or the epididymis stores the sperm cell temporarily. But from the epididymis, now the sperm cell, more especially during sexual intercourse, the epididymis is going to release, or the sperm cells from the epididymis, they are going to move through what we call the sperm duct. This one is self-explanatory. You don't have to cram. When you say the sperm duct, that is the duct that transports sperm, which is also regarded as the vas deferens. And it's very vital for you to know that the sperm duct is also regarded as the vas deferens. Why? Because sometimes you realize that examiner is going to say, what is the function of the vas deferens? Because he will be knowing that if he says the function of sperm duct, obviously I'm just going to know that this is the duct that transports sperm. So it's very vital for you to know the sperm duct and also the vas deferens. And then, like I've already indicated, the sperm duct is the duct that transports sperm. But from where? You need to know that it's from the epididymis to the urethra. And then from there, we also have the 3 glands that are regarded the accessory glands. I normally tell my students that they are abbreviated as special or SPC, because when you write special, if you check the consonant, the first one is S, the second one is P, and then we omit E because E is the vowel, and then we check the C, which is the consonant again. So we've got SPC. It's very vital for you to know this order. Why? Because it's also going to assist you with regard to their functions. Then S stands for the seminal vesicle. S stands for the seminal vesicle. And then P stands for the prostate gland. And then C stands for the corpus gland. Please make it a point that you revise this according to this order. And then now, what is the function of the seminal vesicle? Remember, the sperm cells are going to be released, and then they are going to swim, and then after swimming, they are going to make it a point that they fertilize the egg. But now, let us check what's going to happen. Remember, the sperm cell, they are the cells. Then this cell should eat. Now, what provides breakfast in this regard is the seminal vesicle. You need to know that sperm cell are like students who are supposed to go somewhere, and then, but they must have breakfast first. Then who provides breakfast is the seminal vesicle. In other words, when we talk about this function of seminal vesicle, we are going to say it provides sperm cells with nutrients. That's the first point. And then from there, let me say the sperm cells are giving an excuse to say, I'm personifying this. Maybe they said, no, we've already eaten. But the challenge is that along the way, we're going to have a problem with regard to the uric acid. Because remember, the urethra also releases urine. And urine has got uric acid. I'm sure you still remember in grade 11. Under excretion, when you talk about the components of urine, they also have the uric acid. And this acid is obviously going to kill the sperm cells. Maybe the sperm cells are giving an excuse to say, now we've already had breakfast provided by the seminal vesicle, but we're having a challenge along the way that we're going to find the acid that is going to destroy us. So the prostate gland as the second gland simply says, no, don't worry. With regard to providing the way, I'm going to do something here. Remember, I'm sure maybe when you were busy with agricultural science or physical science, somewhere you know something about the pH scale, where we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7 is neutral, and then 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. On the right-hand side of 7, that is from 8 to 14, is called the alkaline, but between 1 and 6, between 1 and 7, in fact, is the acidic medium, and then 7 is neutral. So I want you to learn this. Because we have the acid now, which is found in the urethra, and the sperm cell have given an excuse to say we are not going to travel all right because there is the acid. So the prostate gland says, no, don't worry. I have got the fluid, which is called the alkaline fluid. Remember, from the pH scale that I've just given you, we've got the alkaline fluid, the alkaline side, and also the acidic side. And then at the center, we've got the neutral. So now, in other words, the prostate gland secretes the alkaline fluid. Then this alkaline fluid neutralizes the acid, because when it combines with that acid, it forms neutral. Hence, we're talking about number 7. So now the prostate gland secretes alkaline fluid, which neutralizes the acid. Let me say the sperm cells say, no, okay, we are fine. We have already had breakfast, and then also along the way we are fine, but we are very lazy. We know that we are not going to move faster. And then we need somebody to facilitate our movements. So the corpus gland says, no, don't worry, I'm there. I'm going to secrete the mucus-like fluid that facilitates the movement of the sperm cell. So in other words, the sperm cell no longer have any excuse. Remember, the glands that I've been outlining right now are the accessory glands, namely seminal vesicle, prostate gland, and also the corpus gland. And then now we also have what we call the ejaculatory duct. The ejaculatory duct. And then the ejaculatory duct, from the word ejaculate, remember during sexual intercourse, when sperm cells are released or ejaculated from the male or are moved from the male to the female, we call it ejaculation. So there is the duct that forces that particular movement. So the ejaculatory duct, you need to know their function. They force its content, or they force the content of the semen. Remember, the semen we are talking about the sperm cells and the 3 fluids that are released by the 3 glands through the urethra. And then the other one is the urethra. Then the urethra is a common tube for the passage of urine and semen. The urethra is the common tube for the passage of urine and semen. And then the last one is penis, which is number 9. This one transfers sperm into the female reproductive organ, which is the vagina. So now we're done with the part of the male reproductive organ. But the other thing that we are supposed to know is the structure of the sperm cell. So how are questions going to be asked based on the structure of the sperm cell? Number 1, examiner may request you to draw the label structure of the sperm cell. During our time, sometimes when this examiner says, draw a label structure of the sperm cell for argument's sake, and then he says 5 marks. If you provide 5 labels, you know that you are going to get 5 marks. So, but now I discovered a lot of things when we were at marking center during final examination, where learners lose a lot of marks. Let me guide you on how to draw the structure of the each and every diagram, not necessarily sperm cell only, but let me use sperm cell as my point of departure. Number 1, always when they talk about the structure, maybe requesting you to draw the label structure of a particular organ or whatever. Number 1, with regard to this one, if maybe they are saying 5 marks, 3 marks are going to be supplied. 3 marks are going to be allocated to labels. So the other mark is going to be allocated to the caption. You need to make sure that you write the caption. Like when you say sperm cell, you are going to get a mark for that. So many learners lose a lot of marks because they just draw the structure of the sperm cell and they supply 5 labels. And then you realize that the structure is not all right. And then on the other end, they don't even have labels. So out of those 5 labels, we only mark 3. And then you get 3 instead of getting 5 marks. So number 1, make sure that you provide labels, but be sure, make sure that you can also provide more than 3. But the most important thing here, because when we mark, we mark only 3 that are correct. But please don't forget to write the caption, just to say the structure of the sperm cell. And the drawing should be according to the appropriate proportion. In this regard, we are going to talk about appropriate proportion for the head, the middle piece, and also the tail. So some of the questions based on this, maybe before we come to questions, you need to know the following. Number 1, you need to know that the head consists of 2 main parts, which are the acrosome and the nucleus. The head consists of the nucleus and the acrosome. And then the acrosome is the sharp-pointed part at the end of the head. And then it releases an enzyme that breaks the membrane of the egg. It releases the enzyme that breaks the membrane of the egg. Many learners make mistake with regard to this function. They normally say the acrosome break the membrane of the egg cell, which is not correct. We are saying the acrosome releases the enzyme. The thing that break the membrane of the egg is not the acrosome, it's the enzyme that are released by the acrosome. So please make it a point that you take that into cognizance, because we don't want you to lose marks unnecessarily. And then the other point, because we said the head consists of the acrosome and also the nucleus. So the function of the nucleus is that it contains 23 chromosomes. In other words, it has got one set of chromosomes, and then we call it haploid. So don't worry, you'll know a lot of things based on this one when we'll be discussing gametogenesis, the formation of stem cells and also the formation of the egg cells. And then the other thing that we're supposed to know is the middle piece. So the middle piece, or in some books they talk of the middle section, it has mitochondria, which provides energy for swimming. It has the mitochondria, which provides energy for swimming. Remember, you cannot separate energy and mitochondria. In grade 11, you discuss something about cellular respiration, where we talked about mitochondria and energy. So always when you see energy, you think of mitochondria. So now, tail is used for swimming. In other words, it propels the sperm cell forward. And then from here, we also have questions based on this. Maybe examiner may end up saying, let me give you a particular question that was set in 2015. And then it was part of EC type. It was saying, explain the structural suitability of the sperm cell for its function, and it described the involvement in the formation of a zygote and the development of this zygote until implantation. From this statement, I'm still going to repeat it towards the end and also discuss almost everything, but I want you to check the following. It says, explain the structural suitability of the sperm for its function, just here. Then because when you say, and describe the involvement, this is the second subtopic, and the development, that this third topic, but I'm concerned about the first one. Explain the structural suitability of the sperm cell for its function. And then I'll guide you with regard to this one when we come back from break.
All right, thank you, sir. We're going to be getting into news headlines and your sports in detail, and then we will continue with Mr. Majia.
Progressive Talk.
We think that this particular matter of Mr. Suluba was carefully planned on the basis that, currently in the office of the Premier, there are quite a lot of fraudsters, which were given some lenient, sanctions relating to 3 months suspension and so on, including the very same spokesperson, Mr. Kenny Matiba.
Why do you say he's a fraudster?
You know that he was charged with misconduct relating to, kilometers which he has never traveled. What do you call that? Is it not fraud? It's fraud, in our view.
Progressive Talk with Ngamula Chauke, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. on Capricorn FM.
In a changing world, shouldn't you change your money habits, like accessing a personal loan via the Nedbank Money app from the comfort and safety of your home? #Let's Change Money Habits. Nedbank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply. See money differently. Nedbank.
News headlines on Capricorn FM.
In news-making headlines, sanitation remains a challenge in some schools in Ilim and the surrounding areas as schools prepare to reopen or operate under level 3 lockdown. Meanwhile, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, says exercise hours will be extended and the sale of liquor will be permitted on Mondays to Thursdays between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And the Gauteng Department of Health says it is currently looking into allegations that a pregnant woman was denied food for 3 days by staff members at the Beki Mlangeni Hospital in Soweto. Your final bulletin at 6 p.m.
Capricorn FM Sports, on and off the field. We've got you covered.
Ndikolibuwa itu bashundi matabama aradabesizwa mitambo kaino awara. The Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma announced this afternoon that non-contact professional sport will be allowed to resume when the country moves into level 3 of the national lockdown from the 1st of June. This comes after a relief. This comes as a relief, rather, more so for Cricket South Africa, as the Proteas set to host India in 3 T20s in August, a series that is expected to net the cricket governing body hundreds of millions of rands. The Sports Minister Natim Tetra will provide clarity on the return to non-contact sports on Saturday, with rugby and soccer expected to remain suspended as they are contact sports. Level 3 of the lockdown regulations continues to fight against the coronavirus pandemic, wherein any match would only include players, match officials, journalists, and media and television crew. And moving still with soccer, rather, Cape Town City midfielder Thabo Notata says he will remain grateful to former Mpumalanga Black Aces coach Mushin Etograo for playing a part at the beginning of his career in the PSL. The Limpopo, south of Durban-born Notata had joined the Johannesburg-based Academy of Mpumalanga Black Aces at the age of 16 while in grade 10, wherein he later worked under the leadership of Etograo in the senior club in the 2015-2016 ABSA Premiership campaign. Now the 24-year-old, who has since moved to Cape Town City, and having a good time there and attracting the attention of some of the biggest clubs in the country, including Kaizer Chiefs, spoke with Sports Journal Dumisani Koyana about the foundation that was laid by Mushin Etograo.
I'd get chased away. Mushin would chase me home. Mushin, the last time he chased me home, it was for a back pass. I never got it until he was gone. Is that father you can't go to just for anything, man. And even when you do go, you keep your distance. You man up. But he was the right person for me to get at that age, man. Because all this funny business that you might fall into when he just took it out. And you got to training, you were nothing but a servant. And that was it. The foundation professionally, the foundation that was laid when I started earning a salary in football was laid by him,
And lastly, with another major announcement, following 3 months of no football due to coronavirus pandemic, the Premier League has earlier today finally announced 17th of June as the restart date to complete the season. Leicester's 4-0 win over Aston Villa on March 9th was the last match to be played, with Liverpool just 2 wins away from securing the title. Wednesday saw top-flight clubs voting unanimously to return to contact training, and we're meeting again today to discuss issues such as the restart date, the reimbursement to broadcasters. Following this announcement, first 2 matches would be Aston Villa versus Sheffield United and Manchester City taking on Arsenal, with a full fixture list going to be played on the weekend of the 19th to the 21st of June. And as it stands, after 2,752 tests across the Premier League so far, 12 people have tested positive for the coronavirus. And that is all from me, Namusinga Labuna. But more of your sports, on the go breakfast, Machero Nga Macheloni. And for more updates, Kabartabereka Capricorn FM Sport on Twitter, and for Capricorn FM Sport, ne Duvusanimo.
Keeping you up to date with the latest sports news. Capricorn FM Sports.
Thank you so much, Tuvusani. It's exactly 26 minutes before 6. We are going to be continuing with today's lesson, which is Life Sciences Term 1, Human Reproductive System, Male and Female, with Mr. Majia. Do you remember that? Sorry? Leave me alone.
Wait, say it with me.
Okay.
Gametogenesis.
Let's stop wasting time. Your questions are welcome on 0826542446. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks very much. So then that is gametogenesis. I'm still going to discuss it right now. But before that, initially I said we are going to also discuss the cervical suitability of the sperm for its process of fertilization. So I think let me shelve it. I'm going to discuss it towards the end. So that we continue with the female reproductive system. Now, under this subtopic, learners, you are expected to know the following. You need to identify and state the functions of ovary, fallopian tube, uterus, the endometrium, which is the inner lining of the uterus, then the cervix, vagina, and its external opening, which is the vulva. So remember I said you need to identify and state the function. Again, like I indicated when I was busy with the structure of the male reproductive organ, you need to check any book that has the structure of the female and then study those structures and know exactly where the fallopian tube is, uterus is, endometrium is, and so on and so on. Why? Because as much as I said it, when we're busy with male reproductive system, examiner may point the structure labeled 3, maybe the structure labeled 3 fallopian tube, maybe says what is the function of the part numbered 3. And then if you don't know that this part is fallopian tube, although you know the function of fallopian tube, you are still going to experience a lot of problems. So that's why I said it's very vital for you to be able to identify and state the functions of each of the following organ or part that I've just outlined. Let us start with the ovary. Remember, when we're busy with the test, we said they secrete sperm cells, but the ovary secrete the ova or the egg cells. And it also secretes 2 hormones, namely progesterone and the estrogen. Ovary secretes 2 hormones, progesterone and estrogen. And then when you check the 2 hormones, that is progesterone and estrogen, which one do you think is responsible for pregnancy? So if maybe you become frustrated or become confused, just know that you are going to use the formula of P is equals to P. Progesterone starts with letter P, and then meaning that progesterone is responsible for pregnancy. Now, the other part that you need to know is the function of the 2, that is estrogen and pregnancy. Estrogen and progesterone. I've already dealt with progesterone. Let us check the estrogen. Estrogen is responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics in female. Remember, we talked about testosterone when we're busy with the male, but now here it is estrogen which is responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics in females, more especially at puberty. Like I indicated when I started with my presentation, a 2-year girl and a 22 years maybe lady, when we check them, when we compare them, you'll realize that no, they do differ. So, like they have got breasts, the widening of hips, their hips are widened, they have pubic hairs, they start to menstruate, and so on and so on. Those aspects are brought forth by the estrogen as a hormone. Hence, I said it is responsible for the development of secondary sexual characteristics. And then the fallopian tube, you look at its position. When you look at the particular diagram, you realize that the fallopian tube is found between the ovaries and the uterus. And for that matter, you don't have to cram it. Because it's found between the ovaries and the uterus, you simply say it connects the ovaries to the uterus. As simple as that. Then the other point is that it transports the egg from the ovary. It transports the egg from the ovary. The last point with regard to fallopian tube is that it is the site for fertilization. Remember, fertilization does not take place in the uterus. It takes place in the fallopian tube. And then we also have the uterus. The uterus, its function is to carry embryo and fetus during pregnancy. Carries embryo and fetus during pregnancy. We also have the endometrium, which is the inner lining of the uterus. This one serves as the place for implantation of the embryo. It serves as the place for implantation of the embryo. And we also have the cervix. And then the cervix, it stretches to allow the baby through during childbirth. It stretches to allow the baby through during childbirth. And is stimulated by the hormone called oxytocin. I'll discuss a lot about this when we'll be continuing with our discussion, although not today. When we meet next time, when we'll be busy with the process of gestation, which is the state of pregnancy. And then the vagina receives the penis and semen during sexual intercourse. Vagina receives penis and semen during sexual intercourse, which is also regarded as the copulation. Copulation, C-O-P-U-L-A-T-I-O-N, the copulation or sexual intercourse. And then now we focusing our attention on gametogenesis now. Gametogenesis is a compound weight made up of gameto and Genesis. And then the Genesis, maybe from the Bible, you know that that's the first book where it deals with foundation or the formation. Now, when we talk about gametogenesis, gameto, which is the prefix now, and the genesis, the formation. So in other words, when you define this gametogenesis, it's very simple. You simply define it like the following. Number one, it is the formation of gametes. The formation of gametes. But you need to know what are those gametes now. Remember, from the male, we've got sperm cells. From the female, we've got the egg cells. And then the formation of sperm cells is called spermatogenesis. And then the formation of egg cells is called oogenesis. Collectively, that is the spermatogenesis and oogenesis. In other words, the formation of sperm cells and formation of egg cells, collectively, they form what we call gametogenesis, which is the formation of gametes. Now, let me start with the spermatogenesis. Number one, you need to know the following. You must know the hormone that influences spermatogenesis, because during final examination, this one is regarded as the point that is, you cannot write the whole process of spermatogenesis without this point. It's a compulsory point where you are going to get compulsory mark. So, but we must start by defining spermatogenesis. So spermatogenesis refers to the process by which spermatozoa are produced from the germinal epithelium of the testis. So it has got three main points here. I said it refers to the process by which spermatozoa, underlying spermatozoa, are produced from the germinal epithelium. The other point is germinal epithelium of the testis. Another point is of the testis. So now, like I indicated, you need to know the hormone that influences this. So you are going to say it takes place under the influence of testosterone. You also get a mark for that. It takes place under the influence of testosterone. And then from there, you are going to say the germinal epithelial cells underlining the seminiferous tubules undergo meiosis. The germinal epithelial cells underlining seminiferous tubules undergoes meiosis. Remember, you're also going to get a mark for seminiferous tubule, and also the part of cell division, which is meiosis. You're also going to get a mark for that. To form 4 haploid spermatids, here you are going to get 2 marks. 4 and haploid, because the sperm cells are having one set. It's haploid. Why one set? Because the egg cell will be busy with oogenesis. You will also realize that ultimately we are going to end up having one set. Why? Because the sperm cell fertilizes the egg, and after fertilization, the zygote is going to result. And then that zygote must have 46 chromosomes. It must have 2 sets. And then each spermatid matures to form a spermatozoa. Each spermatid, out of those 4, all of them, they mature to form spermatozoa. Then with regard to oogenesis, let us check it in the following way. Oogenesis, number one, you need to define it. From there, you need to know the hormones that influence the whole process of oogenesis. So oogenesis refers to the process by which the ova, you get a mark for the ova, are produced from the germinal epithelium. You also get a mark for germinal epithelium. Of the ovaries, you also get a mark for of the ovaries. So please, let me revise it again. You said oogenesis refers to the process by which the ova, you get a mark, ova, we're talking about egg cells, are produced from the germinal epithelium of the ovaries. Then already you've got 3 marks there. But now you must also tell us the hormone that influences this one. I'm sure in your mind you are thinking of estrogen and also progesterone, which is not correct. Those ones I already dealt with their functions, but now the hormone that play a major role with regard to oogenesis is FSH, which is the follicle stimulating hormone. So in other words, you are going to say it takes place under the influence of FSH, which is the follicle stimulating hormone. And then you are going to get a mark for that FSH. Then we also have the diploid cells in the ovary, which is going to undergo mitosis. You get a mark for mitosis, and also the diploid. Remember, diploid is 2 and di meaning 2. We're talking about 2 cells. And then to form numerous follicles. The diploid cells in the ovary undergo mitosis to form numerous follicles. And then one cell inside the follicle is the one that is going to enlarge and undergo meiosis. One cell inside the follicle enlarges and undergo meiosis. We are going to get a mark for meiosis again. And then of the 4 cells that are produced or that are going to be formed there, only one is going to mature into the haploid ovum. Only one is going to mature into the haploid ovum. So that is all about oogenesis. But now, based on what I've just presented, examiner may end up saying the following from biological concepts. If examiner says the formation of sperm cells from the germinal epithelium, obviously we're going to say that is spermatogenesis. But if examiner says the formation of egg cells from the germinal epithelium, you must know that that is the oogenesis. Or examiner may end up saying explain or give true, or maybe may simplify it like this, because like I keep on saying, we've got different questions but same answers. Like 7 plus 3 is equals to 10, 9 plus 1 is equals to 10, 5 plus 5 is equals to 10. What we are teaching is 10, but the questions are set in different ways. If examiner says, name the process where sperm cells and egg cells are formed. Remember, you cannot say spermatogenesis and you cannot say oogenesis because they're talking about both sperm cells and egg cells. So in other words, just the simplest answer is to say is gametogenesis. Or examiner may end up saying, name the process whereby the gametes are formed. You also know that is gametogenesis. But when they said sperm cells and egg cells are formed, you simply say that is gametogenesis. Now let us check the questions that can be asked based on today's lesson. Number 1, I've been talking about this one. Maybe examiner says, explain the structural suitability of the sperm cell for its function. Explain the structural suitability of the sperm cell for its function. And describe the involvement or its involvement in the formation of a zygote and the development of zygote until implantation. And the development of zygote until implantation. Then with regard to the structural suitability, just underline the following: structural suitability. In other words, we're saying, how do you think the sperm cell, when we check its structure, it makes it suitable for its function? Remember, its function, we're talking about the function of fertilization. In other words, you need to know something about the functions of the sperm cells or the parts that are found in the sperm cell. So number 1, you need to know that the front head or the front part of the head of the sperm cells contains acrosome. You get a mark for acrosome, which carries enzyme to dissolve a path into the ovum, which carries enzyme or which releases enzyme that dissolve. In some books they talk of dissolving the membrane of the egg. Then you get a mark for that. Number 1, you are going to get a mark for naming the part. Number 2, you also get a mark for giving the function. Then the other point, you can say it has got the nucleus. You get a mark for the nucleus. Remember, you're talking about the structure of the sperm cell. You get a mark for the nucleus, and then you also give us the function of that nucleus. Like you to say, it carries genetic material of the male. It carries genetic material of the male. And then it has the haploid number of chromosome. It has the haploid, remember haploid meaning half, one set. And then the middle piece, you get a mark for outlining that it has got the middle piece that contain mitochondria. The middle piece that contains mitochondria, you get a mark for that. Then you also tell us about the function of the mitochondria. Remember I said you cannot separate mitochondria and energy from grade 11 work under cellular respiration. Then this mitochondria releases energy so that the sperm could swim. they release energy so that the sperm could swim. So you're going to get a mark for just to say that it releases energy. And then again, the presence of long tail, or you may simply say it has got long tail. You get a mark for outlining that it has got long tail, but you also give us the function of that long tail. It enables sperm cell to swim towards the ovum. In other words, propels the sperm cell towards the ovum. And then the other point is that the contents of the sperm cell are in such a way that the cytoplasm is reduced or condensed, making the sperm cell light for efficient movement. But please make it a point that you outline the parts that you think you are going to recall easily, like just to say the head, it has got the tail, the middle piece, and so on and so on. But now, with regard to fertilization, because I've already discussed something about male and female reproductive organ, so now I think let us check fertilization, which is the second point, because the question says, explain the structural suitability of the sperm cell for its function and describe its involvement in the formation of a zygote. So if you underline the second statement, which says, describe its involvement in the formation of a zygote. These are sort of high order questions. Remember, examiner is not saying explain fertilization, is saying explain its involvement in the formation of zygote. So in other words, for a zygote to be formed, meaning that you need to know that it is formed during the process of fertilization. In other words, examiner wants you to explain that it has got fertilization. And immediately you write fertilization as the second subtopic. You are going to get a mark for fertilization. Why? Because you have been able to interpret the statement to say the involvement of sperm cell in the formation of zygote is called fertilization. And then from there you start to explain the whole process of fertilization. Many learners with regard to fertilization, they make a lot of mistakes. They start by explaining a lot of things, and then ultimately towards the end is then that they're going to say the sperm cell fertilizes the egg. Then you are going to get only one mark for that. So tell us about fertilization. So number one, you must tell us that fertilization takes place in the fallopian tube. You are going to get a mark for that. And then you simply say one sperm cell makes contact with the ovum or the ovum's membrane. You get a mark. Remember, it's only one sperm cell. Millions and millions of sperm cells are released during sexual intercourse, more especially during ejaculation. Plus minus 4 to 8 million of sperm cells. But only one sperm cell is the one that is going to fertilize the egg. So that's why it's very vital for you to say one sperm cell makes contact with the ovum's membrane. And then the nucleus of the sperm enters the ovum. Remember, it's not every part of the sperm cell that is going to enter into the egg. It's only the nucleus, in fact the head, but specifically the nucleus. Why? Because it has got the genetic material. And then the ovum membrane becomes impenetrable. You get a mark for that to other sperms. Immediately the sperm cell fertilizes the egg. So the membrane of the egg becomes impenetrable, so that not a lot of sperm cells are going to get inside the egg cell. Otherwise, if that some particular person is going to be pregnant, you realize that it's got a lot of children, maybe 7 or 8 or even 9, because that's why it's very vital for the sperm cell to immediately, for the membrane of the egg to immediately become impenetrable, so that all the sperm cells that were supposed to get into that egg cell should no longer get there, as long as one sperm cell has already been able to get into the membrane of the egg. So now the nucleus of the sperm fuses, you get a mark for that. With the nucleus of the ovum, you also get a mark for that. The nucleus of sperm and the nucleus of the ovum. And then to form a diploid, you get a mark for diploid zygote. Why? Because at least now you know that sperm cell which is haploid and egg cell which is haploid, when they fertilize each other, ultimately we end up having the diploid zygote. And then you must also tell us that this is called fertilization. And then the other subtopic says, and the development of zygote until implantation. Development of zygote until implantation. I'm still going to discuss this during the next lesson, but let me give you this scenario. We are going to use the mnemonic devices. Just write development of zygote until implantation. In other words, that is the third topic. third subtopic. Write Z is equals to Mbefui. Z is equals to Mbefui. Just write M, B, E, F. From last year, exam guideline, they said we should also use 2 Fs now. The first F, the second F. Then you write U. You also write I. Z is equals to Mbefui. So I'm going to explain it in full next time when we meet. Or maybe let me just explain it right now. You simply say the zygote divides by mitosis. You get a mark for zygote and mitosis to form that M stands for morula. Or let me just explain what's happening about Z, M, B, E, F, F, U, I, A. Then Z is zygote, and then M is morula, then B is the blastocyst. In some books they talk of the blastula. Then E stands for the embryo. Then the first F is for the fallopian tube. The second F is for the fetus. And then U is uterus. And then I is implantation. Remember, it's development of zygote until implantation. So you are going to use that formula. And then time and again when you study, please make it a point that you go through this and check as to what's happening. Now we can say the zygote divides by mitosis many times to form the embryo. But before that, it first consists of a ball of cells. You also get a ball of cells called morula. And then which then develops into the hollow ball of cells called the blastula or the blastocyst. And then from there it embeds itself in the uterus or the uterus lining, which is the endometrium, using the chorionic villi. So this is how you are supposed to answer this type of question. The next time when we meet, we are still going to check the questions that you might have posted, and then we'll start with those questions. And I'll also coin some of the questions based on today's lesson. But on the other hand, again, I'm also going to discuss, you need to know that we're going to discuss the menstrual cycle and also gestation, which is the stage of pregnancy. And then good luck for today. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir.
Alrighty, and that is our catch-up lesson for today with hashtag Kagiso Radio Teacher Life Sciences Term 1. Now, if you've got any other questions, 08265424446, we'll be more than happy to forward them to our educator or hashtag Kagiso Radio Teacher. But I'll join on their next lesson when they do come back for the next catch-up lesson. Thank you so much for coming through, sir.
No, thanks very much. Thanks.
All right.
This lesson was brought to you by Kagiso Trust in partnership with the Limpopo Department of Education and Capricorn FM. Kagiso Trust, overcoming poverty. We are out of here. Thank you so much.